Okay. This is Hannibal here from the Hannibal TV on YouTube. And we're just sharing feeds here with none other than the author of Sabu's book, which is available on Amazon now. Sabu, Scars, Silence, and Superglue. None other than Kenny Casanova, who is not only the author of Sabu's book, but many other wrestlers' books that I'm sure we're going to touch on some of the other ones. But the unfortunate news happened that that Sabu, we got the news on Sunday that he passed away at 60. What was your reaction?
I was super bummed, I really didn't expect it, to be honest with you. I figured he'd outlive us all. For those of you who have seen his matches, I mean, basically, he's kind of like a Superman. He keeps taking a licking, keeps on ticking kind of thing. And, didn't expect to see it anytime soon. It was kind of shocking.
When was the last time you had contact with him?
Every couple of months we talk and we just catch up and see what's going on, and I send him some book money and all. I do pretty much all of the distribution for the books and all for him. We split it and everything's been really cool. I'm super happy that he let me write his book, I posted that on my page recently that he could have picked anybody, a shirt and tie or whatever, but he picked someone from the wrestling world like me. I'm a pro wrestling manager, been doing it since like 94 or something like that. And he kind of wanted to go with somebody to help him with the book that knew kind of wrestling more so than wasn't just a writer, and he's a guy of very few words, and I had to pick his brain a lot and get him to speak a lot more than maybe he was typically comfortable doing. And I made it as comfortable as we could, though. So,
yeah, did it take much convincing to get Sabu to be part of this project? Because I know to do a shoot interview, when I first did mine with him, he wasn't doing that many that were just going on YouTube, and he was a little nervous about opening up at that time. Since then, he became a lot more open. But I know you did that book even a couple years before I did my interview with him. So was it difficult at all to get him to open the curtain of behind the scenes?
I mean, a little bit, and it's funny too because you kind of have to interview quite a bit to catch the voice. So at first, I wasn't really getting his voice perfectly down in the pages. I remember once I used a word trepidation somewhere, and he said, "Kenny, I don't think I've used the word trepidation," and I'm like, "Oh, why not?" He goes, "I don't even know what the fuck it means." so I was like, "Oh, okay," and then what happens is I get to know him a little bit more. We talk a lot, and more and more phone calls, and interviews that we had together. Then I started to catch his voice when I really started to talk to him more and more, and that's when he also started opening up, I think. And it's funny because a lot of people say, "Oh, Sabu is fearless. He jumps through, barbed wire and explosion matches and all kinds of crazy stuff in Japan and all." But he's kind of shy, man. I mean, some of the quietness is because he's not really a big talker. He just kind of to himself a little bit. And that's how he is, almost like his uncle, the Sheik, who barely ever said a word.
What were you most surprised about Sabu as you got to know him over the course of writing the book?
Geez, I'd have to say he's super generous. And I think all of his friends will tell you that he really went out of his way to help the other guy in the ring. If he didn't know, a lot about the business, he'd sit him down and try to help him, or he would take guys and pay them out of his own pocket sometimes if they didn't have much money. And, some of the promoters out there, where shady is not the greatest word for them, but maybe another word might be. He would try to make good with some of them sometime. If he was getting paid big bucks, he'd throw them a little bit his way, their way. And just a super nice guy, I think. So, the big monster type wrestler personality that everybody sees, especially guys that played, crazy characters like he did, wasn't really the guy that you would come to know when you hung out with Sabu. He's fun and super nice guy.
He is nice and everything, but I would say, unlike some of the wrestlers that play monsters, like he does actually have that side to him too, the wild and crazy side. Like if I think if there was a street fight or something going on, he wouldn't back down from it
Sure. Yeah.
necessarily. Because we've seen some wrestlers that play those roles not be monsters. But when was the first time you actually saw him wrestle or heard about him? Because for me, it was back in those After magazine days.
Yeah, me too. I think actually I would say the first time I saw him wrestle live was at Lost Battalion Hall in Queens for an ECW show. And I remember the opening match was Chris Jericho versus Lance Storm. I couldn't tell you the date, but I remember that was the opening match. Didn't know who they were really, those guys yet. And then I learned about them, and Sabu was on that show for sure. And then just a couple years later, I got to work with him. I actually managed opposite him. I managed a guy named Don Vega on a Mike Sparta show, WWA show out in Vermont. It was me managing Don Vega versus Sabu, and his manager was there, Bill Alfonso. Funny story that night, too. Sabu came to the show, and it's a little bit late. Him and Alfonso went. They got cheeseburger subs and banana milkshakes and stuff like this, and they were eating them and all. And I don't know if you remember, Sabu went through this phase where he was kind of puking in the ring a little bit. Do you remember that?
Yeah, he actually did. I think in his Stampede wrestling match against Ted Hart. I think I remember him doing that.
Yeah, I don't know if it was. He said a supplement he was taking or something like that. It wasn't agreeing with him all that well, you know. So we're working against Don Vega, and he gets Vega up for a slam, slams him, and then just barfs right down straight into his mouth. And I'll tell you, Don Vega, I see him still, and I tease him about that and all, and he's like, banana milkshake, disgusting. You know, but Sabu is funny. He gets in the back. He's, oh, I'm sorry, brother, sorry, you know, this and that, you know, but you get blood and sweat all over each other, you know, but quite often there's not barf involved, and not usually into your mouth.
Yeah, I mean, what was his reaction? Did he puke himself? Because that's probably what I would do.
Yeah, he was like, oh, he couldn't believe it. Like, he immediately was spitting and all. And then the referee, this guy Sal, was a riot. Sal kept coming over to me and throwing these one-liners and stuff about, you know, this is our gut-wrenching match and all this stuff. And in Sabu's book, actually, I called Don Vega and we retold that story and all. And Sabu, you know, was funny. We made it kind of a comedy act. So.
What was his childhood like?
Oh man, so yeah, it's funny, you know. So he, the book opens where he's out partying a little bit as a bit of a teenager, you know, and he definitely knew his uncle, the Sheik, was a wrestler and doing this and that, but he wasn't a whole lot really in the business himself, but he wanted to, he aspired to. And big crazy party scene where these guys, I don't know if there were some kind of gangbangers came in on some party he was at, and people got to fighting, and Sabu actually got shot in the face. And that's kind of why he had teeth missing. And you see him early on where he's got the exposed teeth to some degree before, you know, he had them fixed and all. That led him up to being in a hospital, and the Sheik visiting him quite a bit. And he said, hey, is it time now? Will you finally train me? And the Sheik agreed to train him. Quite a journey in the training, because, you know, these days, as you probably know well from your exposure with the business and all, quite often people are just kind of let right in. But back then, you know, they really put people through the ringer and all. And he's training in the backyard, but more like Miyagi stuff. Like his uncle's having him do like, you know, building up the ring, putting up the ring and taking it down, and just kind of doing all kinds of more like chores and drills and stuff, more so than the actual wrestling. But then eventually he started having some students a little bit in his backyard where they had a ring, a big rusty ring, and that's where Rob Van Dam showed up. And they would just kind of go over the basics whenever the Sheik was around. But the moment the Sheik went away, that's when they started that real innovative stuff, the flips and all of the things that Sabu became and RVD became known for, that very different, almost like lucha inspired stuff, but bouncing all over the ring kind of stuff. And the moment that Sheik would come back out, bang, they're right back to the basics and stuff. They hid that from a long time. And I think after that, Sabu, started to do some wrestling for Big Time Wrestling and up in Canada a little bit. And then eventually branched out and became what we saw him to become today.
Yeah, I know he wrestled for the Bear Man, like way out in the middle of nowhere, and he was there for Adrian Adonis's death up in Newfoundland, I think, surprisingly enough.
Yeah, sure. That he told me that story. Have you heard that story before about his passing, Adonis?
That he was robbed.
Yeah.
Maybe you could elaborate on it, because I saw the thing that they put in Dark Side of the Ring, but I'm sure that was just a snippet of the real story.
Yeah, I haven't seen that actually. I have that saved to watch. I haven't seen the Adonis episode yet, but yeah. So for those of you who don't know this, Adonis came in immediately from a Japanese tour. He had stacks of cash on him, tons of cash. And I don't know if people saw the cash on him or exactly what it was, but they were riding out in a very icy area. And at some point, the car slid. I think they turned to get off from hitting a moose or something like that. And it went down into the water. And I mean, the way that Sabu said that he heard it is that someone from the ring crew was in a car behind, could have helped, could have saved them. Opened up the back of the truck, and basically like Adonis is reaching to try to, help me out of here, or help me out of here is kind of how they say it. And maybe the guys grabbed the money and kind of just let him go and basically robbed him as he drowned, as he went down in the water. This sounds very overly dramatic the way that that's told. And I'm not sure it's exactly like that, but there's probably some truth to some of that, because money was a factor in him not being rescued.
Right. That's a sad ending to Adrian. Did Sabu ever talk? Did he expect to live a long life, or is he like some of the wrestlers that are just like, well, with how I've treated my body over the years, I mean, I'll be lucky to reach.
Yeah,
60.
I think, I remember Piper saying that I'll never make it to 65. Piper said, Sabu kind of said some things like that from time to time. And I'm like, nah, you'll be here forever, man. We just kind of blow it off kind of thing. But I think he started to feel a little bit mortal, in the passing of Melissa Coates, who was his girl for a long time. And she suffered some kind of infection to her leg and became an amputee, and passed soon after. And it's rough, because if you look back, hindsight and all, when you think about relationships, when the old man's wife dies, he doesn't live very long afterwards, right? And in this case, she passed, and it really bothered him, and he talked about her forever. And now he just recently had his last match, and I mean, I could speculate, only to say that he's giving up wrestling. He's retiring, and he also lost, Melissa, and then he goes soon after. I don't know if there's much to compare to the old man losing his wife and has not a lot left to live for or not, but maybe there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, and that was my feelings when I heard it. Like, you never like to hear about a person dying, but I mean, this is the guy that loved wrestling. This is what he did, and he was becoming more and more limited to do that. He did not have a big backup plan. It's not like this guy's going to work at Walmart. He loses the love of his life. I saw them together. He loved her. There's no question that. So it's like, yes, he died, but would he
She
have
did
really
so much for him. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they were great together. It's a weird couple that you wouldn't necessarily would think would be good, but I mean, I saw them together numerous times, and you could tell when someone's truly in love, and he was definitely truly in love with her.
Yeah, and I kept trying to help. It's not really my forte, but I wanted to help him with merchandise like she did for him. Because a wrestler these days, they make good money in matches and all, but there's good money in merch, right? So t-shirts and different things, 8x10s and all of this, and a lot of guys, once they step out of the ring, they're finding a whole new career in Comic-Cons and things like that and appearances. But she really did a good job, keeping up his merchandise, getting new shirts and, offering little deals online and stuff like that. And when she was gone, so was kind of the merch thing. He was really lost. I did a TNA show with him one time before where we were releasing the book and he went and, set up a table and stuff like that. And he just did not really want to handle money. He didn't want to be the wrestler saying, here, give me $10 toward an autograph or something like that. He really needed that other person to do that for him, and she was perfect for it. So, it's too bad.
Hulk Hogan's tight says, did they find out how he died, or have you heard anything through the grapevine?
Sure. You want me to say? Yeah. So I talked to JR Coates today. That would be Melissa's brother. And then I also talked to Sabu's sister, Paulina. And basically, it definitely was there was a rumor there was a heart attack. And it was cardiac arrest, but it wasn't like, as far as they could tell, it wasn't like a foul play thing. He fell asleep and had a heart attack in his sleep. I do know that there's been some talk about this supplement he was taking. It sounds
Kratom.
Kratom. That's it. Yeah. And I don't know a lot about that. But from what I understand, it's a bit of a painkiller and it's also a bit of an energy booster, and it is legal.
Yeah.
Same as
I take it before I work out sometimes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So, I took Hydroxycut back in the day and it helped me. I dropped like 30 pounds, and I would say it's something similar to that because it's legal now. And maybe it's got a little bit of a negative connotation on it from what I've read, and maybe it'll become illegal, but it's not really like, taking something crazy,
It's weird because it's illegal, but if you go to the smoke shop and ask what it does, they'll say, we can't answer that. And then you'll be like, okay, well, there's the blue ones, the green ones, and the red ones. What does this one do? We can't answer that.
Yeah. Dude, I never even heard of it until today. Like, I didn't even know what it was until somebody directed me to, I'm saying Joey Morella, but that's not his name. The guy that he worked, Joey Janela.
But it does definitely, it can affect your, I don't know if that's it, but I think there was the big hoopla of, they were saying he needed to take that in order to be good enough to have the match. I don't know if they were saying that was because he died, but that he wasn't fit enough to have the match without taking something. And who knows if it was that or if it was something stronger than that.
But it's still been a full month since that match. You know what I mean? So I don't think that, and it takes a month of something to get out of your system for the most part. So I'm going to guess that it wasn't really that, but he may have suffered concussion in that match, which might have worn tore his body a little bit more. I'm not sure, which could have led to the heart attack, and he would be the first one to say he partied and did all kinds of stuff that, maybe he shouldn't have in the past that might have beat on him to some degree. So maybe he's a little bit more susceptible to issues, but I really don't think
was that they were kind of like, people are saying, well, if he couldn't have walked and he had to do that, then they shouldn't have let him wrestle. But I mean, it was Sabu's decision, I guess, in the end, and they would have had to issue refunds probably.
I don't know. Ric Flair still just had a match even, you know what I'm saying? So it depends what you're going to do, I guess.
Although Sabu's was a lot better than Ric Flair's, and I'm sorry that he got hurt in the match because I did watch those clips. Which, by the way, fans, if you hadn't seen it, there was a couple botches that were problems with like the ring and stuff. It wasn't necessarily even their fault, but it was definitely one issue with the ropes that injured him on the one thing, right?
Yeah. I kind of like the look though. He was wearing the the suit and stuff like that, which is a little bit like the feel of the Sheik, right? And it's funnier because the older he got, the more and more he started to remind me of his uncle. And I could see that a bit in the clips I saw of that match.
Yeah, and it's too bad AEW didn't use him more in that type of role. What was his reaction? I mean, I'm sure you must have talked with him. I know it was after the book, but about his AEW appearance. And do
Oh,
you
yeah.
think there would have been more in the end? I mean, they're going to ECW Arena in August. I'm sure they would have used him if he'd still been alive.
Yeah, he was psyched for the AEW, and I'm happy he got it. Because that always, a good national bump like that gets you a little more interest everywhere, and helps out quite a bit. He in his entrance and everything was cool the way that they did with AEW. I thought it was neat. I guess it's not a Titantron there, whatever they call their version of it. The screen.
Yeah, it was
Looks cool.
one of the coolest things that happened in AEW. I'd honestly say top 10 best moments.
Yeah, I thought it was super cool. And, too, sometimes when the wrestlers get a little older like that, they keep waiting for that one more shot somewhere, and then it just like never comes. But he still got his little shots here everywhere. I'm happy for that too, because, wrestling was huge for him, and he really, breathed wrestling. Everything was wrestling to him. So for him to get to jump into, the hot new promotion like that and have a spot like that was great.
Now, Sabu, I mean, he obviously had a very raw, unfiltered style in the ring. Could you share an example of how you translated that part of his personality into your book?
You might. I don't know if you saw this. Did you see a viral post now of the FU section of his book? In the end, that was his idea.
No, I didn't.
Okay,
but maybe you could clear what I'll ask you after. But tell us.
Yeah. So at the very end, sometimes like in an interview or even like a rap out hip hop album, there's like, yo, shout out to my boy, Millie Mill, and shout out to Prince Marky D and all these people, right? The shout out. He wanted to do something like that at the end, but do the opposite of it. And it was a fuck you shout out. So he listed off a few people that he was kind of pissed at, and then told why he was pissed at them. And one of them, he was a little bit mad about Jim Ross, who owed the Sheik some money still from a bad booking deal way back in NWA. Another guy he didn't like was Test, who didn't sell for him that well. And then there were some medium FU shout outs. One was for Kurt Angle, and it was just, he's like, I don't really hate Kurt Angle, but I would just say to him, you, sir, I could do without. Another one was Vince McMahon.
Kurt Angle threatened him or something, right? He's like, I'm the crazy guy in WWE. There can't be two crazy guys.
Yeah, it was something like that. So he didn't really go after him all that much, but it was just kind of like, screw you kind of thing. He said, I don't even really hate Vince McMahon all that. I understand that he's mainstream and I'm not really mainstream. So we clashed in that, and he had his moment where he was in the Hall of Fame and he, did an induction speech, and he was not following Vince's kind of format for that exactly. But really, he just said he didn't like the way Vince McMahon would try to shake your hand and break it when you're least expecting it, like to really crush your hand. So he doesn't mention that, but it's like a list of just like, stuff he didn't like about a few guys, and he just kind of slammed them, and that's how he ended his book. So I thought that was pretty harsh, because usually you go the opposite, right? You give credits and you give thanks, and he gave disses. And the funny thing is too, we wrote it like he did his Twitter. So if you remember with his Twitter, he would horrible spelling, horrible grammar. He would use 3 semicolons in a row. Instead of a comma and things like that, like just stuff that. So we tried to like emulate his Twitter in that section.
And I don't really want to go down this path, but maybe you could clear it up, because there has been some people, and I don't think he was racist, but he would throw around the N-word sometimes here or there. Some people said it was written in the book, and I'm like, I find that hard to believe.
No, if he said it to me, or he didn't use that word that much at all, really, but if he said something that was off color, I did clean it up in the book. I kept him away from saying something. And again, some of the older guys, we we used words back in the 80s that you would definitely not use today. Same thing as like, Eddie Murphy's stand-up comedy act, Raw, would not fly today, like he would say faggot or something in it, and Eddie Murphy would say in his stand-up act. And, he was super old school, Sabu. So once in a while he'd drop a word and that's not PC anymore, and I'd clean it up.
And in my experience with that, he was always talking about people he actually hated. And I'm not saying it's right or not, but like he's not saying it as people as like, oh, so and so, that bleep, as if he's just insulting the guy.
Yeah.
And as you said, old school, that the other word too, which I mean, 1990, you could say that.
Well, have you
interviewed
Ken Patera before?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So same type of thing, but not quite that bad. But Ken, I love.
Yeah,
I did his book too,
Ken takes that to another level, and you wrote his book too. I mean, we'll get into all these. We definitely have to have you back about Ken Patera sometime, because he's beloved on this channel. And again, Ken, I think he explains it, and I'm not saying it's right at all. I don't have that in my vocabulary, but he's from a frame where they would say it in the dressing room, and I mean, it's shocking to people that aren't from that era. But
the times change, and you got to get away from that stuff. And you see what it's done to Hogan now. They caught him up on a word, and it's just destroyed his whole career, right? So
now he's. How do you think his freestyle wrestling promotion is going to be?
I don't know really. Who knows? I think it'll just kind of be maybe like that slap promotion. It might be cool for a bit and then just kind of go away. I don't know. Is that slap thing still happening? I kind of like.
I heard that they're doing. I heard they're doing one with wrestlers now. Specifically, pro wrestler Kazarni is involved with it.
All right.
Brandon wants to know: is there a reason he didn't show up for Paul Heyman's Hall of Fame induction? I would guess that it's because they didn't offer him a payday. Maybe.
Yeah, that's probably it. I didn't hear. I'm sorry. That's a funny thing too, because a lot of the ECW guys kind of still revere him, but they all were kind of screwed by him at the end of ECW, where he owed them a lot of money, and Sabu was one of the smart ones. Just before everybody got screwed over, and Paul Heyman filed for Chapter 11, Sabu said, "Nah, I'm not going to get paid. I know it. I can feel it. So I'm not going to do these last gigs," and he just didn't go. So then he wasn't really owed as much like other people were. So he felt it coming.
Smart in that way. Your book includes passages by guys like RVD, Taz, Tommy Dreamer. So many people were fans of Sabu and knew him. So many famous people. I mean, even after he dies, you got Sami Zayn and even all these guys coming out like Taz again. How do you decide who to put in and who not to put in?
Geez, that's a good question. I just kind of feel around, and a few people just don't sometimes want to collaborate. It's funny because the way that, and I really love Conan. Conan said, "Yo, I got Sabu's book. I was checking it out, and all these guys are just putting them over in the book." And it's true, though. They really did. I think Blue Meanie and Joel Gertner and different guys. I just said, "Hey, you got anything nice to say?" And I figured I'd get a quote. And you could get a quote and throw it on the back. But these guys were like, "No, I'm not going to write a quote. I'm going to write 3 pages." Like Al Snow and Tommy Dreamer, different people had a lot to say about him. So that book had a lot more guest passages than a lot of books would have, because he was that instrumental in playing a part in making them think differently about wrestling. So asking for a quote became guest passages, and I couldn't turn them down and would put them all in. It's funny because when I did what's up, Kenny? Hey, when I did Vader's book, I asked Jim Cornette to step in and say something and maybe do a forward for me. And he had done so for Kamala's book that I had done. But it's funny because Jim Cornette, in true Jim Cornette fashion, got the request, and I got an email that I've saved and I've been very proud of. And whenever I read the email, I laugh. And you can hear Jim Cornette's voice basically saying, "Kenny, I'd do anything for you, but the fat bastard started calling me names, doing this and doing that, and talking a bunch of shit about me, and just anything he wants to have his hand in, I don't want to have anything to do with, and I could definitely hear his voice, and I'm laughing when I'm reading it. So the other people kind of pick too. They don't all give me something. He did chime in, by the way, Jim Cornette, though, years later for this recent Dark Side on Vader. So they kind of maybe patched things up to some degree, I think, at some point.
Yeah, I haven't seen the Vader Dark Side, but they used some of my footage of him apparently. But I loved Vader as a person. I
Great.
just
Yeah.
absolutely loved him.
Yeah. Now he's probably a better example of the monster who isn't necessarily a monster all the time outside of it.
Yeah.
He's more friendly, big teddy bear sometime, as Kamala was as well.
Did you find, and I found this, did you find that Paul Orndorff thing really destroyed him?
Yeah, he was, so if we're shifting gears on Vader, that book took me 4 years to get out. The reason is we had finished a draft a good year and a half, 2 years in, and then he got his death sentence, man. He went into the hospital, chest issues, and they told him he had congestive heart failure and that he had 2 years to live. So we're like, oh man, and he had his own little bit of like Sabu, he had some FU shout outs in there. So we decided that if he's going to pass away, we have to think about this book as being kind of his legacy, his Hall of Fame, because at the time he was not inducted in the Hall of Fame. It was super important to him. So we started to look at the book as how.
Yeah, I just want to say quickly too, when he did his interview with me, he took the Hall of Fame into account and asked me to retape some things after. Says, hey, this might affect me getting in the Hall of Fame.
Right. He was super smart and would think about image and things like that. And wrestling's super political, and he wasn't in, and he knew that he could get in if he played politics to some degree. So that came into play with the book. And also knowing that once he passes, he's not going to be able to fix that. That stuff is in there for good. So originally he had some not great words, and then we kind of smoothed it out, and he made peace with it. I think he wasn't as negative, and and I'm not even so certain that he totally got his ass kicked there. There was other things coming into play. One thing is, for those of you who might remember, he was an agent, so he was protecting himself against somebody that was throwing himself around at him, had other people looking at him. So he had a lot of things coming into play, like I can't deck my boss. I also can't look bad in front of these people. The guy also only has one arm. The other arm doesn't work that well. So he had a lot of problems with that.
And and also people hated him backstage. Let's face the facts here. Sure. And at one point, I think Haku would be the only person that would give the honest answer, because he supposedly broke it up of what happened. Because if someone's disliked, everyone's just going to say he got his ass kicked. But there's other people that say Vader was still going, and they didn't actually stop until Haku got in there. And it was Haku that ended it. It's not like Vader was on the floor
being destroyed. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But that's the way the legend is told. And, they always say that, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. And then these stories become bigger and badder than they actually were. Did Vader ever open that shopping mall?
Good question.
He did have something going on where a shopping mall where he rented out space. I don't believe he had his own stores, but he got into real estate. So he started in real estate, then he jumped over to wrestling, and then went back to real estate to some degree.
Well, Kenny, I definitely want to have you back on about the more individual people in your books, 150%. We won't take too much from Sabu, but as far as like getting back to, you do lots of other wrestling books, how did you differentiate Sabu's autobiography from the other guys like Vader, given he was so unconventional or anything? Is there something in particular different about his book?
Well, so, for one, you want to get the voice, and I think he did a good job doing that. I'd write the whole book, and then after I had done all of those interviews, now I could do almost an impersonation of him, and then I could go back and make, fixes on all the words and make them talk and sound like Sabu. So when you read it, it sounds like a story that he's telling. The other thing is we wanted to select the stories that would appeal to more of the extreme type audience that really looked up to him and really loved him. So the stories are a little bit more brash, a little bit more gory. I would use more, description when he was in that barbed wire match with Terry Funk, and then he like filleted his arm and blood is coming out, and Bill Alfonso's throwing in duct tape to have him duct tape himself back together, and just blood, guts, and gore everywhere all over the place. Whereas maybe if I told the same story in Vader's book, I would have told it with different adjective use, so it would, one, sound like Vader, and two, would appeal to the more I guess the less extreme audience that liked Vader, for lack of a better term. Does that make sense?
Definitely. And as far as Sabu, he had all these extreme moments like the barbed wire matches you talked about in that crazy one
Sure.
with Terry Funk. Is there any story from the book that stands out to you, and why?
What I found interesting is when he started to really establish himself, the whole thing with the tables, and he really claimed ownership to the tables, and he felt that was a big part of his gimmick, and he made that. And I remember as a young kid watching maybe Hulk Hogan, maybe I don't know if it was a pile driver or if it was a body slam, King Harley race through a table. I mean, you would see it here and there, but it wasn't like Sabu, where he would use his body as a weapon to actually put someone through a table. And I think what happened is it got huge pops in ECW, and so much so that the other wrestlers wanted that, that easy pop, and they, maybe a show he wasn't on, they would do it, and then they started asking him permission, and he didn't really want to give it up. But I think maybe Bubba Dudley was the first one he kind of gave the blessing to, and then everybody just started using tables like that. And, so I found that kind of interesting, that whole, him being generous at the same time, but wanting to protect part of his own gimmick that he was building and creating himself off of, using his body as a weapon to push a guy through a table, and allow others to have a piece of that.
Now, he's well known, has a reputation for various addictions. Could you clear the air about as much as you could from what you noticed and what he talked to you about? Because I know this is actually covered in the book, and he's talked about it in public too. Like, what are the misconceptions about his addictions, and what are we getting that's true?
The big stereotype was that everybody in ECW was just constantly taking drugs and doing this and doing that. I think he might have done some pain pill things that just kind of you do a little bit of pain pills to help get to the next day, to the next match, and then you build up a tolerance, and then you need a little bit more. And that was tough. But I think in the later years, he was more just doing some drinking. I would think he drink some, and he was the first one that said, "Hey, I've been a drug addict." He would say that from time to time. And a lot of those guys partied and this and that. There was a section in the book where he talked about going to a hotel one time, and he walked down the hallway, and then you could get anything you want. You would open this one door, and in there they would have weed, and then the next door they would have coke, and the next door they would have this, and the next door they would have that. He said a lot of times he'd partake, but a lot of times he'd know that I shouldn't do too much. If I do too much, I'm going to be too messed up, and he didn't want to do that in the ring and this and that. So.
And I've seen him personally turn down drugs at one point. I won't go into any further details, but I've witnessed it with my own eyes. Someone offering him something and him saying no.
Later years, more that I think.
Yeah, this would have been 3 or 4 years ago when he had Melissa with him.
Yeah,
but I don't think it was because Melissa was there.
Sure, yeah, and I think the same thing. I think he had said later on, he's been staying away from. Some of the demons and stuff like that, and he might just drink a little bit, but that was about it. And he did say at some point, you have to slow down, or life's going to go too fast. So,
And as far as like you mentioned the pain pill addiction, did he mention in that when those would have started? Because I mean, you're saying he's shot in the face as a teenager, so this has got to be a guy that's had significant pain in his life for a lot of years.
Yeah, no, I don't think. I think that came much later, though. I think more with the wrestling stuff. He probably took, some kind of medications when he got shot in the face. But I think as far as an addiction, it came uh, just a little bit before ECW, somewhere in there, and I couldn't really tell you where exactly.
What do you think personally his biggest mistake was in wrestling? Because I mean, there's no doubt he'll go down in history as an icon, but he definitely could have been more mainstream had he played his cards a little bit better.
Yeah, maybe if you want to call it a mistake, I'm not sure that's the right word, but if you really wanted to get to that mainstream level, he had to kind of play the big game, and he didn't, I don't think, want to do that as much with Vince McMahon. He was still kind of on the idea of he didn't like the cartoony side of wrestling. He still was in the mindset of, ECW where this is more adult oriented. And if he had embraced a little bit of the goofy and a little bit more of the cartoony world of WWE, and also didn't turn down some of the ideas immediately, like maybe he did backstage, he probably would have stuck around. From what I understand, I'd heard this a few times too. Vince McMahon liked Sabu, and Sabu he thought was one of his more favorites. He saw, some kind of definite talent in him when he put him against Cena and this and that, and Rey Mysterio. But I think it was the politics side that he didn't do that well. He didn't let people shit on his ideas, really. So I don't know if I want to call that a mistake or not, but maybe he would have gotten further. And he will admit that wrestling didn't give him what maybe he gave into it. So he never really got that big, payday that he was hoping for. I think originally he turned down what was going to be the Sultan role. Am I right in saying that? And Rikishi became that, I think.
Yeah, he would have looked good in that outfit.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think
But
that was originally for him, but he was going to have the Iron Sheik was going to manage him. And politically, he wanted nothing to do with that because the Iron Sheik would have been like the knockoff of his uncle, the Sheik. He always felt that there was a bit of gimmick infringement there. And I think that might have been the reason why he turned that down. Who knows if he took that, to mirror that, you remember when Mick Foley came in, he wasn't Cactus Jack, and Jim Cornette and different people said, why are you not making him Cactus Jack? He's already known as this. And he embraced Mankind because it was Vince McMahon's idea. And then eventually he got to do all kinds of things and was really in Vince's favor. Opposite that, back, if you look at Vader, they wanted to call him the Mastodon, right? And he didn't want to do that. He wanted to stick with Big Van Vader. And because of that, I think he might have suffered the same, fall as Sabu. He didn't really follow Vince's ideas, so therefore you're not one of Vince's toys. You're just someone, I could be wrong, but
right. Now, obviously, there's some very heavy topics covered in this book, and you're kind of a funny guy. How do you balance like the heaviness of it and keeping it light and not too depressing, keeping it exciting as an author?
yeah, I think really bouncing back and forth, try to make it an emotional roller coaster. So whenever something felt too dark, I try to throw a punchline in there, and I think I'm pretty good at punching things up, and I'm becoming even better now. I mean, when I first started writing, I was kind of figuring things out, but I think along now I'm close to, I've got like 12 books out now. I've come to realize that it's better to be short, but do some description to start a backdrop. So you describe a scene, hit people with the, maybe the gruesome and the blood and stuff. But if you can't stay in that world, you have to jump out and do something more fun, and give a little bit to everybody, or else you'll turn off an audience to something. I'm getting better at that.
You mentioned he didn't really like the Iron Sheik due to the rip-off aspect of the character. I kind of got that impression
Please, yeah.
from him too. Obviously, the original Sheik he loved a lot. I mean, I talked to him about the original Sheik when the times I met him because I'm a big fan. How did you notice the Sheik influenced his career, and is there any stories about the two of them that you could share with us?
Well, sure. I think that everything from him using little weapons and not speaking and having a manager be his mouthpiece to make him more mysterious and playing off the whole patriotism idea of being as anti-American as possible to alienate your audience. And the Sheik used to try to play it off as being super rich and as well to make the less than elite, less than more poor fans also hate him. I wouldn't say that Sabu necessarily did that, but he copied a lot of stuff that the Sheik did, and together, I don't know. He followed him around quite a bit. He was kind of his ward, and everywhere they went, the character was still kind of kept. He lived the gimmick, the Sheik, and I think so did Sabu, except for the people that he was close to backstage. Sabu looked scary. People would stay away from him, and the same idea. So I'm trying to think of a good story I could tell. I think it was the Sheik that came up with the idea of the pointing to make himself look even taller and bigger than he actually was, and Sabu, living on that legacy, taking that same pose. And both, Sabu's not the biggest guy in the world, but when he puts his hand up, then he's opening his body and making himself look larger than life. So some of those theatrics and all play a role in making him larger than life. Yeah.
I know Sabu had some encounters with the Japanese mafia. I think they're called the Yakuza. Is there any stories about that in his book?
Sure, there is. Let me think. See, I'm picturing others. I remember one with Buddy Landell shaking the guy's hand, and the Yakuza, if they had a guy that has been an annoyance to them every time that they had a strike against them, they would remove a finger. So I remember Sabu telling me the story that Buddy Landell was with him somewhere. He shook his hands and shook the guy's hand, and he realized the guy is missing some fingers, and he said, "Who did you piss off?" That kind of thing. Okay, yeah. So I think here's a story. Sabu was with Mike Awesome on a show somewhere, and the Yakuza sitting in the front row, and they didn't like to be touched. That's how super elite that the vibe that they put out there. And I think he jumped out of the ring and he bumped one of them, and the guy, jumped in his face and said, "Don't you touch me, don't you come near me," this kind of thing. So Sabu said, "Watch this." And he did it again and made it very obvious that, he was like landing in the guy's lap practically. Soon after that, they're all chasing Sabu out of the arena. Sabu runs into the back somewhere, and they're jumping him, and they've got a chair over his neck, and they're about to crush his windpipe, and Mike Awesome runs into the locker room for the save. He just starts throwing these guys left and right, and then they jump into a little room somewhere and lock the door, and they had to stay in that room for like 3 or 4 hours until the Yakuza left, and then the Japanese police came and escorted them out of there or something like that. So yeah, those guys, you don't mess around with them.
Mike Awesome, another one that passed away too young. His book is on Amazon. Gina, is there anywhere else that people can pick it up?
Yeah, you can check out all of my books at wohw.com. That's my own website. And Amazon has, pretty much all the books too. And a number of them are on Audible too now, so you can listen to them. So,
yeah, that's my preferred method these days as I fall asleep. The only problem is finding your space.
Your place.
After.
Yeah, I'm trying to learn how to do that too. There's a timer, so it'll go like 5 minutes, but I think you have to keep resetting that. It's kind of a pain in the butt if you're listening at night, and things do put me out. I've been listening to Stephen King a lot, Audible books lately. That's kind of my new thing.
I bet those will give you some fun dreams, I bet.
Oh yeah.
For some reason, even though UFO books give me nightmares, I'm kind of addicted to listening to them and having these crazy nightmares. I'm a
Sure.
very weird guy that actually enjoys
A free
the
horror movie, right?
nightmares. And speaking of the books, I mean, the title of it is Scars, Silence, and Superglue. How did you guys come up with that?
Sure. I mean, I'm an English teacher, so we've got assonance there. That's where the letters are all the same: scars, silence, and superglue. Like, you think a lot of the popular names of wrestlers over the years, like Hulk Hogan and all Brutus Beefcake, they all have those same regular not vowel sounds, consonant sounds at the start. So also I've got scars, and then that's one syllable. Silence, which is two syllable, and super glue, that's three. So it kind of rolls to have those three different elements of Sabu's life that are kind of summed up in one phrase: the scars on his body, of course, the silence of him never speaking, and the super glue was how he would put himself back together at the end of a match if he was bleeding quite a bit.
What level of school do you teach?
I teach 12th grade, and I used to teach alt ed. So it was like Mr. Cotter, if you remember that show back in the
Yeah.
day. Welcome back, Cotter. I used to teach the bad kids, the non traditional learners. But eventually it switched, and now I'm teaching like the honors level. I'm teaching a bunch of kids that actually have a classroom right in a hospital, and they go around and they watch autopsies and live births, and they're learning in high school and getting credit. So it's pretty cool.
Have you ever had to break up any crazy fights?
Yeah. Actually, once I did early on in my career, the first 6 months of me teaching, I was in a maternity position as an English teacher. There was a bunch of ruckus outside of the room, and I ran out, and two kids are fighting, and they're going at it, and I jumped in between them, and a kid reached over me and hit the other kid in the face, and his nose concaved. It went in. Like it was the inverse of a nose. It was the opposite of a nose, and there was blood everywhere. And I was holding a handful of tests that I was grading at the time when I ran out there, and I'm trying to hold the two apart, and I'm still holding the test, and there's blood all over the tests. So he caught it. He caught the other kid really good, and I had to actually photocopy the tests with gloves, latex gloves on, and then give back, copies of the tests so we didn't get blood and contamination back to the students. So they didn't get
The
erased.
reputation of that kid after must have been made.
Oh yeah, I called him Rocky the rest of the year. I mean, he really leveled the other guy's nose, though. It was bad.
Jesus. I was just talking to someone else the other day. It's got to be so bad these days. You get in a high school fight with everyone having
Oh yeah,
videotape.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it was already bad enough the pressure in those situations, and now you got to worry. It's like documented for
yeah.
history. Is there like punishments in schools now for people that film that and post it to avoid it happening?
Well, they're going to Hochul, our governor here in New York, is actually doing a no cell phone rule statewide, where they're going to take away all the phones and have them locked out the moment the kids come in, and they can only like maybe look at them at lunchtime or something, depending on the school's individual policy. So yeah, I think that if it gets to that point now where there'll be a fight like that, maybe there'll be less phones because of that rule here in New York. Anyways, we'll see what happens. It's gonna come into play next year.
Yeah. Well, that would have got some views. You in the middle and someone's nose exploding.
Yeah. So
Matt wants to know, what would you say Sabu should be remembered for in the ring, and what personal qualities should he be remembered for?
see, in the ring, I would say again, they call him like, an innovator, and a lot of the wrestlers look up to him for looking for different ways to do moves. Like him using his body as a weapon. Like, he didn't hit someone with a chair; he put his legs over the chair and then dropped on them. He did a lot of things like that, where he would use his body as a weapon with the weapon. Same with the tables and all. And I think that's one of the things that he'll be looked at as contributing. As far as the personality thing, I think he's really funny. Like, you go to a place where maybe it's not being televised or whatever. I remember doing somewhere, I think this was in Jersey somewhere, and they didn't have his music. and the guy was all upset, like, oh no, I don't have Sabu's music, I don't know what I'm gonna do, I can't believe I don't have it, and this is at a time before they could just go and download it quick or whatever. So he's like, hey kid, you got that wannabe song by Spice Girls? And he's like, yeah, I want that to be my theme. Like, and it's like, dude, what, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. It's by the Spice Girls, and that he used that theme that night. So that's what I'm telling you. I kind of know that Sabu, the funny non-monster when he wanted to be, fun and stuff like that. So
I've seen Abdullah the Butcher do that. He always used to say, "Bring me out to Everybody Dance Now." He did that a couple of times. For some reason, he thought that was hilarious.
CNC Music Factory.
Yeah. You think there's too much emphasis? Yeah. Do you think there's too much emphasis on music now? I know it's a big thing and it's a big production, but to me, some of these indie guys go crazy. It's like, it's not like you're in WWE. I mean, you should be able to go out there and pop the crowd, whether you have music or not.
Sure, yeah.
You see some divas back there.
I think it's funny that, Jericho really got them all singing his theme song. And then now that's become a thing, like where everybody's singing, like the fans are singing the wrestlers' theme songs as they come out. And that's like a thing now, where they're learning the lyrics and stuff. Back in the day, I can't picture me, don't go messing with the country boy. Like, I don't know if I would get down with singing the Hillbilly Jim theme song, but maybe I don't know.
Now, one of the mysteries, I don't know if do you remember the Pile Driver album?
Oh, dude, yes. I mean, that's my first album ever. Well, actually, the wrestling album was. And recently, I just got the wrestling album. I got like a promo poster. It's on the wall over here. Of the fold out of the wrestling album where you can see all the wrestlers and all of this. And
that's cool.
Yeah. I might be able to move the computer and show you that. I'll do that while we're talking. If you want to mention what you're going to mention,
I was going to mention, I did like Hillbilly Jim. Maybe I'm the only one that liked Waking Up Alone with Hillbilly Jim on the Pile Driver album. Do you remember that?
I dropped the mic.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Here's the mystery of it. And Hillbilly couldn't even tell me, oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. You have my respect, good sir. Oh man, you got the Kamala thing. We got to have you back. I mean, we got to have you back on about everybody. But it says on the Pile Driver album that song is sang by Hillbilly Jim and Gertrude.
Yeah. And Gertrude.
Gertrude was his pig, was it not? Is the voice the pig? Because I asked him, I'm like, who was singing that? He said, I'll be honest, we were never in the same room. That was just another voice. I have no idea who sang that, but like it just says Hillbilly Jim and Gertrude.
Right. So Mona Flambe was Cyndi Lauper, though, right? So when you see her name on stuff, that was Cyndi Lauper singing. Mona Flambe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. I'll look into that. I always wondered who the female was in that. Mm-hmm. But as we come to an end here, is there any stories that for whatever reason you wanted to put in but didn't put in, either for whatever reason? Why couldn't you put it in? Maybe he didn't want it in. You can share with us now that he's passed. Or was it too late? You already had it in production. You're like, damn it, I forgot to put this story in.
No, I think we put everything in. I think there was one that was questionable that we were thinking we shouldn't put in. And then because he is ECW and he is hardcore and this and that, and we throw it in. There was a funny story with, I think, Raven getting a slip and slide, one of those big long canopies that they would kids would
yeah, I definitely had those,
right? And they set that up down the middle of a hallway in a hotel, and they put a hooker at the one end of it. And I feel like they put baby oil all up and down the canvas instead of water. And then they took a fire extinguisher and tried to set it up like a jetpack. And they wanted to rocket straight into the prostitute at the end of the canvas, for lack of more description there, if you know what I mean. And we weren't going to put it in, and we did put it in. So.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What came out of that? Did anything funny happen, or did it?
They couldn't quite make it work, and then at some point they changed something up with the fire extinguisher and the way that it was being held, and then it actually worked the way that they pictured it should work in a cartoon. Like it actually did propel the person and made him fly down the slip and slide. So,
Oh wow,
yeah.
very interesting. Well, as we wind it down here, as we close it off, I want to share
Gross
this.
note to end on, but yeah.
Well, it's funny, but here's the list of your Amazon list of all of your books.
Oh,
And
okay.
again, I mean, anytime you have some free time and want to talk about any of these guys, I mean,
Sure.
I'm a fan of all of these guys. I could talk about them all day. You got Tito Santana, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, Earl Hebner, Vader Time, Sabu, Kamala, Nightmare Danny Davis, ODB. Man, you with
That
like if you had to pick just three, are
oh
they like babies you can't pick or?
yeah, it's really tough. I can just throw you a couple things I like. Danny Davis's is a young adult book, which is a little different than a biography. So it's kind of got like a beginning, a middle, and end, and there's a message, and about working through over obstacles and bettering yourself, and wanting to be like the person coming up, and not striving to be the champion, but be the contender, the person that's trying to get better and trying to make a name for themselves. That's the message in that book. So I thought that was pretty cool. So that's one of my more favorite ones, and it's one of my smaller books. As far as the bigger books, geez, I don't know. It's always the last one I really like a lot. Like Earl Hebner is really cool. He tells a lot of the behind the scenes stuff and unsung heroes and people that worked, behind the scenes in WWF when he was there, and talks about, he developed the having the idea of having an earpiece in the ear before any other referee was asking for that type of thing. What had happened was, is his name Mark Eaton, the bell keeper the timekeeper that had been doing things for a long time. He would watch the matches and not give the cue to hold the pencil up that we got to end the match soon. And Earl said, I got to do something because he's not giving me my cue. He goes in the television production box and asks for the same little headpieces, earpieces that the producers are wearing. And they figure out a way to get him one. And then he became the head referee and then had everybody start wearing these earpieces where he could hear at least from the television production, truck and get messages across to the boys better than they ever had in the past using technology. So that's actually an Earl Hebner creation, which is pretty cool.
And of course, that's been exposed a bit since in that famous Secrets NBC special.
Sure. Secrets of the Wrestling. What was that?
The old pencil. Harley Race with that great disguise. Yeah. You'll never figure out it's Harley Race.
Yeah, and they would say stuff like, you ever see all those signs outside in the ringside? Well, quite often the promoters make the signs themselves and then hand the signs. It's like, I doubt that's really what was going on, but
at that time, in that era, no. What about Kamala? He was a great guy. So in the legacy wing, in the honorable legacy wing, he didn't quite have as good a career as Tugboat.
Sure,
wasn't really enough for the main.
Yeah, but Kamala was great.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He really was. Yeah, good guy. And the funny thing is, he sounded more like this when you would talk to him. He didn't really sound like,
He got me a whole plate of food when I came over. He had like a whole, like not many people. Hillbilly Jim's really nice, but Kamala was another one. Had whole thing, and we ate honey donuts after.
Yeah,
the quality of him was amazing.
When we did his book, we did a Kickstarter. Because basically the whole point to that first book that I had anything to do with was really to help him out because he had lost both legs to diabetes. So we did a Kickstarter, and you were getting a reward of a book that I was going to have to write, and I did. We took as a special reward some guests out to Texas de Brazil, which is like a Brazilian barbecue. And they got to eat the food. I don't know. You ever been to those where they bring this?
Yeah, they cut it. It's delicious.
Yeah. So they bring out like a leg of lamb and they cut off a little piece and stuff. And Kamala's there, and he's in heaven eating all the meat that he can eat. He just kept saying, the only thing that would make it better, Kenny, is if they had some rabbit. And he wanted to eat rabbit, and they felt bad because they wanted to hook him up, but they just, they didn't have rabbits on a spit there at Texas Brazil.
Now, what about ODB? Any stories on her?
Yeah, she was super cool to work with. In fact, I did Mick Foley's coloring book with him, Cactus Jack and the Beanstalk, and he helped me write that, and we put it together and had a good time. It's kind of like a fairy tale version of him facing different cameo guys in a coloring book, comic book kind of form. There it is. And he wrote me afterwards. He's like, Ken, ODB had this issue with her truck. She had a food truck, and it burnt down, and she's kind of, bum luck right now. It'd be cool if you gave her a story, and who's going to tell Mick Foley, no, I'm not going to write the story. So I wrote a whole book with ODB from his recommendation. And it was really cool because she went through, and talked about, being younger and making mistakes. She dated Mr. Kennedy and had a falling out with him. And,
he was quite the player, I've heard.
Yeah. Yeah. She grew up with him, and
him and Lacey Von Erich too.
Yeah. Yeah. What's Davari? Davari and Kennedy. So it was those three. They were traveling around doing all kinds of shows and stuff, and working guys like CM Punk early on and this and that. And she had a falling out with him when they had a shared cell phone, and this is when not everybody had their own phone and stuff. They had one that they were using to get bookings, and one day she looked at it, and some girl from the gym was trying to set up a date with Kennedy, and then they broke up. That's so some dating advice from ODB, and she was just fun. She was really fun to work with. She was great.
Last guy I'll ask you about, although I could ask, well, I'll ask you about Tito. One question about Tito, but I got to ask you about Beefcake.
Okay.
Anything from him? He's a good friend of mine.
Oh yeah, he was great. He was fun to work with too, and he really was huge. And a lot of people don't really remember him for being like the name that he became as Bruce the Barber. I mean, if he had been
He's
around
underrated.
Years,
he's underrated, and people
really
throw
is.
him under the bus all the time.
They just say he was just Hogan's buddy who got pulled along, and that happened a little bit in WCW after the accident and stuff, But and when he couldn't use the name Brutus the Barber, and he was burdened with all those crazy gimmicks that they were giving him there, but I would say the neat thing is to really see how he had that massive parasailing accident where he was helping somebody get up in the air, and then the boat turned and went a 90-degree angle, and the legs hit him in the face, just shattered his whole face, and he had to overcome adversity and that obstacle to even live a normal life again, let alone get back in the ring and wrestle. So that story of strength and perseverance is huge, I think.
The first house show I ever went to was in June '89. Beefcake against Savage main event. There was 10,000 people legitimate selling out the Ottawa Civic Center, and they all had Brutus Beefcake shirt. Anyone that, I was there. That may have been the peak of his thing, but he was never more over than that for people that want to throw shade on him. I remember that night like there's nothing. He got a massive pop. I know looking back, there's a lot of haters out there, but and the other thing for Starrcade, when he faced Hogan, they had a bigger crowd in Nashville than the Dragon against Flair when he was the Butcher facing. Yeah, it was actually sold out. So he had a less memorable WCW run, but there were some peaks in it too. But I gotta ask you about Tito.
Okay,
did he talk about Jenny? His daughter in that, or did he stay away from that?
No. Okay, so when this was written, I don't think that was revealed yet, but I went with him recently. We did a Don't Call Me Chico little book signing tour with him and special guest Greg the Hammer Valentine, which was super cool. And they did some Q&As and this and that. And I was driving with him afterwards, and he says to me, he's like, Kenny, recently they had this thing, and they found you know, and then she was my daughter. I couldn't believe it. They checked the hereditary, the whole deal with the genes, and you know, the good thing about it is that when you do the math, I wasn't married. You know, I was still single, but it was close. You know, so, but he was bummed that this came about, and basically the girl wanted to kind of crowbar him into helping her with the, you know, her wrestling career and this and that. But he told her, he said, I really would like to, you know, but it's going to cause heat with my wife, and I have to stick with my wife and this and that. So you can say, you know, that you are the daughter of mine, but I just can't appear with you. It would cause too much family problems, you know. So, and he always was a family guy. I mean, he would leave shows super early to get home to the wife and stuff like that. So you got to give him that.
Yeah, and I mean, you do pretty damn good impressions of all of the guys, don't you? Is
Yeah, my
there
cornet
anyone that
wasn't good tonight, but normally it is.
you got to give us a Billy Jack Haynes? I know you
Oh,
got it.
I don't know if I. Jeez, I don't think I can do Billy Jack
All
justice. I'll
right,
have to listen to it.
Harley Race.
See, this is funny. So Justin Race has contacted me, and he has a book in him now. It's all stories of Harley. You know, kind of sounds kind of like this or whatever. You know, so I'm picturing it. So I'll eventually get there with him. But the book is supposed to be called "Don't Tell Your Mother," and it's all stuff with him and Harley. You know, growing up and Harley like kind of exposing him to the business and stuff. So it sounds interesting. I think I'm going to work with him and put it out.
I've
So
heard some stories from him, and he
he's
does a
great.
great impression of his dad. Yeah,
Yeah, better
he
than
would
me
have.
probably. I'll get there.
I would use him honestly if I was. I mean, this is just me as Booker. I would use him as a manager, just
Yeah,
impersonating his dad,
yeah.
just
Why
because he
not?
does it so well, and he looks
Yeah,
like him.
yeah.
There's a whole situation there too, where there's like a fake Harley Race son. Have you heard
Oh
about this?
no, no.
There's somebody that's been going around calling themselves Leland Race
Okay.
for like decades when
Huh.
he's the actual son.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
So
there's
I mean,
also a guy in all the Kamala videos. Not all of them, but a bunch of Kamala videos call it the son of Kamala, which is not his son. You know, it's just some guy that called himself that. So that's a
bizarre.
regular thing in wrestling. I think people ride the coattails. So.
Well, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate your insights into Sabu, and I'll let you tell everyone the website again as you close off here, where you guys can find it on Amazon. Please come back to
Yeah.
go in depth on any of these people. They're all some of my favorite wrestlers. So
Yeah,
I
I
think that's
appreciate
what
you
this
having
is
me on
about.
because a lot of the guys you have on aren't really my my stature. They're more up there than me. So having an indie guy on that kind of just writes some books for the guys now does a little. I'm doing a wrestling show this weekend though, and I kind of do a Russian gimmick now. I'm a Russian manager. I sing the national anthem like Volkov to give a shout out for that. And
Well, let's hear that impression. And
oh,
where's
okay.
that going to be?
That's in Leominster, Mass.
Well, give us a promo in the gimmick.
Okay, yeah. So I would kind of come out and slam everybody for poor hygiene and say stuff like, let me think of some of the lines. I come out here and I smell the audience, and I think you think that we're still in COVID times when, toilet paper was a shortage because when I smell out there, the way you guys think, it seems to me like you're not wiping it enough, and you need to actually, buy toilet paper again and use it. And then I would say something like, "Hey, ma'am, is that kid your girl? When's the last time you washed her hair? It's so greasy. Jeez, man, I think even Joe Biden wouldn't sniff it." So I have a bunch of silly one-liners I say like that, and then I try to get everybody to stand up and sing the Russian national anthem, and it sounds like this. Oh, я силушеві Republis, la hela vavek di reverse highest. And I won't kill you with the whole song, but I kill them with the whole song. When they don't cheer, I sing it a second time. I say it one more time and I sing it again. So
It's interesting that because Nikolai was wrapping up his career, people would actually pop for the song.
yeah.
But despite, I don't know where the heat lies these days with Russia. I think China might be the bigger enemy.
Probably,
I'm
but I
not
grew up with the Russia thing,
sure.
so I do kind of like a Russian enthusiast kind of bring back old Mother Russia kind of thing. And I have a guy named Victor Vanko who's awesome, and he plays up the whole old school Russian gimmick, and almost like we're still back in the 80s.
Very cool. The best era of wrestling, in my opinion. Well, sir, I'll let you close
Thanks
this
for having me
off
on.
with
Yeah.
whatever you want to tell the fans. Shut it down.
Sure. So you can check me out. Most of the platforms, Kenny Casanova. I'm on Twitter as that. Facebook is Kenny Casanova. You go to kennycasanova.com. And check out my book site, WOHW.com, which stands for Walking on Hot Waffles. That's my publishing site. And all my books are on Amazon and Audible.